My daughter was rushed to the hospital. When I visited, I noticed my son-in-law acting strange. When he went to the bathroom, my 6-year-old grandson ran up to me and whispered, "Grandpa, you need to get Mom out of here now. She's pretending to be dead." Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. My name is Barry, and I'm 62 years old. I never thought I'd be the kind of father who'd get a call that would change everything. But that Thursday afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize, and my stomach dropped before I even answered. "Mr. Peterson, this is Memorial Hospital. Your daughter Allison has been admitted. Her husband asked us to contact you." I don't remember what I said. I don't remember hanging up. All I know is that I was in my truck within minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel as I drove the 43 miles to the city. Allison, my little girl. The nurse wouldn't tell me what happened, just that it was urgent, that I should come right away. The drive felt endless. I kept thinking about the last time I'd seen her, maybe 3 weeks ago. She'd canceled our usual Sunday dinner again, said she wasn't feeling well. Her voice on the phone had sounded tired, distant. I'd wanted to push, to ask more questions, but I didn't. I'd learned over the years that Allison's husband, Derek, didn't like me interfering. He'd made that clear enough times. When I finally pulled into the hospital parking lot, my shirt was damp with sweat, despite the air conditioning. I half ran to the entrance, my knee complaining with each step. The elevator took forever. 4th floor, room 412. I found it and pushed through the door. Allison was in the bed, eyes closed, skin pale against the white sheets. Monitors beeped steadily beside her. And there was Derek, standing by the window, phone in his hand. He looked up when I entered, and something about his expression made my chest tighten. He looked nervous, not worried, nervous. "Barry," he said, his voice too controlled, "thanks for coming so quickly." I moved to Allison's bedside, reaching for her hand. It was cool, limp. What happened? What's wrong with her? Derek stepped closer, positioning himself between me and the bed. "The doctors are still running tests. She collapsed at home this morning. They think it might be her heart, or maybe something neurological. They're not sure yet." I stared at him. Derek was 38, fit, always dressed like he was about to close a business deal, even on weekends. Right now, his jaw was tight, his eyes darting to the door every few seconds. "Her heart?" I repeated. "Allison's never had heart problems." "Well, apparently there's a first time for everything," Derek said, and there was an edge to his voice that I'd heard before. The edge that meant I was asking too many questions. I wanted to push back, but the doctor walked in, a young woman with tired eyes and a clipboard. She glanced at Derek, then at me. "Are you family?" "I'm her father," I said quickly. She nodded. "We're monitoring her closely. Her vitals are stable now, but we're running a full cardiac workup and some neurological tests. Has she been under any unusual stress lately?" I opened my mouth, but Derek spoke first. "She's been dealing with anxiety, depression. I've been worried about her for months. This might be related to that." I turned to look at him. Anxiety? Depression? Allison had never mentioned anything like that to me. The doctor made a note on her clipboard, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Can I have a few minutes alone with her?" I asked. Derek's hand landed on my shoulder, firm. "The doctor said she needs rest, Barry. Maybe we should step outside, let her sleep. I just want to sit with my daughter." "And I'm her husband," Derek said, his voice dropping lower. "I know what's best for her right now." The doctor glanced between us, clearly uncomfortable with the tension. "I'll be back to check on her in 20 minutes, she said, then left. Derek's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, frowned. "I need to take this. It's work. Stay with her if you want, but don't tire her out." He walked toward the door, already answering the call in a low voice. The moment he stepped into the hallway, I heard small footsteps behind me. I turned and saw my grandson, 6-year-old Ethan, peeking around the doorframe. His eyes were wide, red-rimmed like he'd been crying. He was clutching a small toy truck in his hands, so tightly his knuckles were white. "Grandpa," he whispered, glancing nervously toward where his father had gone. I crouched down, my knee protesting. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" He shook his head quickly, then ran to me, wrapping his small arms around my neck. I held him, feeling him tremble. "What's wrong, Ethan?" He pulled back, looked at the door again, then leaned close to my ear. His breath was warm, his voice barely audible. "Grandpa, you need to get Mommy out of here right now. She's pretending to be dead." My blood went cold. "What?" "She's pretending," he whispered urgently, tears spilling down his cheeks. "Daddy told her to stay still and not talk, and if she does, something bad will happen. Grandpa, please, you have to—" "Ethan!" Derek's voice cut through the room like a whip. I turned and saw him in the doorway, his face dark with anger. Ethan immediately pulled away from me, his whole body going rigid. "I told you to stay in the waiting room," Derek said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. He strode over and grabbed Ethan's arm, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make the boy wince. "Come on, now." "Derek, wait," I started. "He's tired, Barry. He's not making sense." Derek pulled Ethan toward the door. Kids say crazy things when they're scared. I watched them go, Ethan casting one desperate look back at me before disappearing into the hallway. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I turned back to Allison, lying so still in that bed. I moved closer, studying her face, her eyelids, her breathing, the way her fingers lay against the sheets. And then I saw it, the tiniest flutter of her left eyelid. Not random, deliberate. I reached for her hand, holding it gently. "Allison," I whispered, "if you can hear me, squeeze my hand." Nothing. I waited, my pulse roaring in my ears. Then, so faint I almost missed it, I felt it. 3 small squeezes, the code we'd had when she was little. 3 squeezes meant I need help. My vision blurred with tears. My daughter was awake. She was aware. And she was terrified. What the hell had Derek done to her? I couldn't leave that hospital room. Not after feeling those 3 squeezes. Not after what Ethan had whispered to me. Derek returned about 10 minutes later, his expression carefully neutral, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. He was watching me, measuring my reactions. "Barry, you should go home and get some rest," he said, his voice taking on that concerned son-in-law tone that had fooled me for years. "I'll call you if anything changes." I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered how I'd missed it, how I'd missed everything. "I'm staying," I said. His jaw tightened. "The doctor said she needs quiet. Too many visitors will—" "I'm her father. I'm staying." We stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Derek shrugged, pulling out his phone. "Suit yourself. I need to make some calls anyway. Work doesn't stop just because—" He gestured vaguely at Allison. "You know." He left again, and I was alone with my daughter. I pulled the chair closer to her bed, still holding her hand. "I know you're awake," I whispered. "I know you're scared, but I'm going to get you out of this, I promise." Another squeeze, weaker this time, like she was exhausted. I sat there for hours, my mind racing back through the years, trying to piece together when everything had gone wrong. Allison had met Derek 9 years ago. He'd seemed perfect, successful, attentive, good with Ethan when he was born. But looking back now, I could see the cracks I'd ignored. It started small. Allison missing family dinners, then missing holidays. Always with an excuse. She wasn't feeling well. Ethan was sick. Derek had an important work event. At first, I'd believed it. Then I'd gotten frustrated with her, thinking she was choosing her new family over me. I'd said things I regretted. "If you don't want to see your old man anymore, just say so," she'd cried on the phone. "Dad, it's not like that. Things are complicated right now." But I'd been hurt. I'd pulled back, given her space. And now I understood that space was exactly what Derek had wanted. He'd been isolating her slowly and methodically, and I'd helped him do it without even realizing it. I remembered the last time I'd actually had a real conversation with Allison. It was about 6 months ago. I'd stopped by their house unannounced, something Derek hated. Allison had answered the door, and I'd been shocked. She looked thin, tired. There were dark circles under her eyes. "Dad," she'd said, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "You should have called first." I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd say hi. She'd hesitated, then stepped outside, pulling the door mostly closed behind her. "Derek's working from home today. He doesn't like interruptions. I'm not here to see Derek." "I know, but—" She'd wrapped her arms around herself even though it was warm outside. "Things are just easier if we plan visits ahead of time." I'd been annoyed then, Now I understood she'd been trying to protect me, or protect herself, or both. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" I'd asked. "You don't look well." "I'm fine. Just tired. Ethan's been having nightmares, so I'm not sleeping much." "Is Derek helping with that?" Her face had done something strange. A flicker of emotion I couldn't read. "Derek works hard. I don't want to bother him with every little thing." Derek had appeared in the doorway then, all smiles. "Barry, what a nice surprise. Sorry, I'm on a conference call. Can we catch up another time?" It hadn't been a question. It had been a dismissal. Allison had kissed my cheek quickly. "I'll call you this weekend, okay?" She hadn't called. And when I'd called her, she'd been distant, distracted. I'd thought she was just busy. I'd thought I was being a clingy father who needed to let his adult daughter live her life. Now, sitting in this hospital room, I realized I'd abandoned her. I'd left her alone with a man who was doing something to her, something terrible enough that she felt she had to play dead in a hospital bed. The door opened and a nurse came in to check Allison's vitals. She was older, maybe in her 50s, with kind eyes and efficient movements. She glanced at me, then at Allison, and frowned slightly. "How long have you been here?" she asked me. "A few hours." She adjusted one of the monitors, her brow furrowed. "Has she woken up at all?" "No," I said, the lie tasting bitter in my mouth. But I didn't know who to trust yet. The nurse made a notation on her chart, then looked at me directly. "Are you her father?" "Yes." She hesitated, glancing at the door. Then she lowered her voice. "Has your daughter been hospitalized before, in the last year or two?" My heart started racing. "Not that I know of. Why?" Her chart shows 2 previous admissions, both times released into her husband's care. She paused. Both times with similar symptoms, unresponsive episodes. The room tilted. "What are you saying?" The nurse's expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes held a warning. "I'm not saying anything, just noting patterns. You might want to speak with her primary care physician, get her full medical history." She left before I could ask more questions. I turned back to Allison, my mind reeling. 2 previous hospitalizations? Why hadn't anyone told me? Why hadn't Allison told me? Unless she couldn't. I thought about Derek's story, the anxiety, the depression. I thought about how he'd positioned himself as the concerned husband, the one who knew what was best for her. I thought about how he'd cut me off every time I'd tried to ask questions. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Waiting room, 3rd floor, come alone, about Allison." I looked at my daughter, lying so still. I squeezed her hand. "I'll be right back." 2 squeezes in response. The waiting room, the 3rd floor, was nearly empty. An elderly man sat in the corner, asleep. A young couple huddled together near the window. And in the back, partially hidden by a magazine rack, I saw someone wave at me. It was the nurse from earlier. She gestured for me to sit beside her, her voice barely above a whisper. "I could lose my job for this," she said. "But something isn't right with your daughter's case." "Tell me." "The medications she's been prescribed, the dosages, they don't make sense for the diagnoses listed. And the timing." She pulled out her phone, showing me something. "Look at the admission dates, 2 months apart. Both times right after your daughter had appointments with a family attorney." My blood ran cold. "How do you know about the attorney?" "Because she told me. The last time she was here, she was more alert. She asked me to help her. Said she was trying to leave him, but he kept..." The nurse's voice caught. "She said he kept making her sick, making her seem crazy. I tried to report it, but by the time the social worker came, her husband had already taken her home. And he's very convincing, Mr. Peterson. Very convincing." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "What do I do?" "Document everything. Get her away from him if you can, but legally. He has medical power of attorney right now. If you just take her, he can have her brought back. You need proof." She stood up. "Talk to the social worker assigned to this floor. Her name is Monica Reeves. She's good. She'll listen." "Thank you," I managed. She nodded and walked away quickly, leaving me sitting there with the weight of the truth crushing down on me. Derek wasn't just controlling. He was systematically destroying my daughter, and he'd been doing it for years while I stood by and let it happen. I found Monica Reeves in a small office on the 2nd floor. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her late 30s, with sharp eyes that studied me carefully when I introduced myself. "Mr. Peterson," she said, gesturing to a chair, "I've been reviewing your daughter's file. Please sit down." I sat, my hands gripping the armrests. "The nurse on the 4th floor said I should talk to you." Monica's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe. "Well, what did she tell you?" "That this isn't the first time Allison's been hospitalized. That the medications don't add up. That my daughter tried to leave her husband and suddenly started getting sick." Monica was quiet for a moment. Then she closed the door to her office and returned to her desk. "Mr. Peterson, I need to be very careful about what I say here. Patient confidentiality, hospital protocols, there are rules I have to follow. My daughter is lying in a hospital bed pretending to be unconscious because she's terrified of her husband," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't care about rules right now." She studied me, then opened a file on her desk. "I've been a social worker for 14 years. I've seen a lot of things. And what I'm seeing in your daughter's case," she paused, "it follows a pattern, a very specific pattern of coercive control and medical abuse." The words hit me like a physical blow. Medical abuse? It's when someone uses medical treatment or the medical system to control another person, making them believe they're sick when they're not, administering medications that cause symptoms, convincing doctors and family members that the victim is mentally unstable. Monica leaned forward. "In your daughter's case, someone has been very carefully building a narrative over years. A narrative that she's mentally ill, unstable, incapable of making her own decisions." "Derek," I said, "I can't make accusations without proof. But I can tell you that the pattern is there. The hospitalizations always happen at strategic times, right after she seeks legal help, right after she shows signs of independence. And each time, her husband is the one who brings her in, the one who speaks for her, the one who takes her home." I felt sick. "How do we stop him?" Monica pulled out another document. "This is complicated, Mr. Peterson. Right now, your son-in-law has temporary medical power of attorney granted during her previous hospitalization when she was deemed unable to make decisions for herself. That means legally, he controls her medical care. But she's awake. She's aware. She's just scared. Then we need to prove that. We need documentation from doctors stating she's competent. We need to show a pattern of abuse. And we need to do it carefully. Because if he suspects what we're doing, he could move her to another facility or take her home before we can intervene." I ran my hands through my hair, feeling helpless. "What do I do?" "First, I need to speak with your daughter directly, alone. Can you arrange that?" "Derek watches her constantly." "Then we create a reason for him to leave. A meeting with the billing department about insurance, something that requires his attention." Monica's eyes were determined now. "Meanwhile, I want you to talk to your grandson. Children see things adults miss. If there's abuse in that house, he knows about it." "Ethan." God, I'd been so focused on Allison I hadn't thought about what this must be doing to him. "He's 6 years old," I said. "How do I even—" "Carefully. Let him know he's safe. Let him tell you in his own words, in his own time. Don't lead him. Don't put words in his mouth. Just listen." She handed me a card. "This is a child psychologist who specializes in these situations. If your grandson discloses abuse, we need it properly documented." I took the card, my hands shaking. "How long have you known?" "About Allison?" Monica's expression softened. "I suspected during her last admission, but her husband is very good at what he does. He's charming, articulate. He presents as the devoted husband caring for his unstable wife. By the time I got involved, he'd already convinced most of the staff that she was the problem." She paused. "I'm sorry I couldn't do more then." "You're helping now," I said. "That's what matters." I left her office with a plan, but I felt like I was walking through fog. Everything I thought I knew about my daughter's life had been a lie. A carefully constructed lie that Derek had been feeding everyone, including me. I made my way to the family waiting area, where Derek had left Ethan with one of the volunteers. The woman was showing him how to color, but Ethan's heart wasn't in it. He looked up when I entered, and his whole face changed. "Grandpa," he said, jumping up. "Hey, buddy, want to take a walk with me? Get some fresh air?" Ethan glanced toward the hallway, toward where his father might appear. "I'm supposed to stay here." I'll make sure it's okay with your dad. Come on." I signed him out with a volunteer and led him to a small courtyard outside the hospital. It was quiet there, just a few benches and some sad-looking plants. We sat down and I waited, giving him space. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice small. "Is Mommy going to die?" "No, buddy. She's going to be okay. But she's not moving. She's not talking." "I know. That's scary, isn't it?" He nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "Daddy says she's very sick. He says we have to be very quiet and very good so she can get better." "Ethan, you told me earlier that Mommy was pretending. Can you tell me more about that?" He looked down at his shoes, kicking at the ground. "I'm not supposed to tell." "Did your daddy say that?" A tiny nod. "Buddy, sometimes grown-ups ask kids to keep secrets that aren't good secrets. Secrets that hurt people. If someone is getting hurt, it's okay to tell. It's the right thing to do." Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then, in a whisper, "Daddy gives Mommy medicine, special medicine that makes her sleep. He says it's to help her calm down, but," his voice broke, "but it makes her act weird. She falls down. She can't remember things. And then Daddy says she's sick and we have to take her to the doctor." My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I might be sick. "How often does Daddy give her this medicine?" "I don't know. Lots of times. Especially when Mommy says she wants to leave or when she talks about calling you." He looked up at me, his eyes huge and terrified. "Grandpa, I heard Daddy on the phone. He said, if Mommy doesn't stay quiet this time, something bad will happen to her. Really bad. And he said," Ethan's voice dropped to barely audible, "he said I wouldn't see her anymore." I pulled him into my arms, feeling him shake. "You're not going to lose your mom, Ethan. I promise you. We're going to keep her safe." "But Daddy's scary when he's mad. He doesn't hit us, but he does things. He locks Mommy in her room. He takes her phone away. He tells her she's crazy and nobody will believe her." Ethan pulled back, looking at me desperately. "You believe her, right? You believe she's not crazy?" "I believe her, and I believe you." "Will you really get her out of here? Because the doctor gave Daddy papers. Papers that say Mommy has to do what he says, and Daddy showed them to Mommy, and she cried. She cried so much, Grandpa." I felt rage building in my chest, hot and fierce. "When did this happen?" "Last week. That's when Mommy told me if anything bad happened, I should tell you. She made me promise. She said, you're the only one who can help." Fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. I tried to be brave. I tried to wait for the right time, but I got scared. "You did exactly right, Ethan. You're so brave. Your mom would be so proud of you." We sat there for a while longer, and Ethan told me more about the times Derek would show Allison bottles of pills and tell her one wrong move, and he'd make sure she never saw her son again. About how Derek had fired their housekeeper when she started asking too many questions. About how Derek monitored every phone call, every text message, every moment of Allison's life. It was systematic, it was calculated, and it had been going on for at least 3 years, probably longer. By the time we went back inside, I had a clearer picture of what I was dealing with. Derek wasn't just an abusive husband. He was smart, methodical, and he'd been planning this for a long time. The medical records, the psychiatric evaluations, the carefully documented instability. It was all building towards something. I just had to figure out what before it was too late. I took Ethan back to the waiting area and found Derek pacing near Allison's room, his phone pressed to his ear. When he saw us, his expression shifted instantly from irritation to concern. "There you are," he said, ending his call. I was getting worried. "We just took a walk," I said evenly. "Got some fresh air." Derek's eyes moved between me and Ethan, suspicious. "Ethan, go sit down. I need to talk to Grandpa." Ethan obeyed immediately, and that obedience, that instant fear response, told me everything I needed to know. Derek stepped closer, his voice low. "Barry, I appreciate you being here, but you need to understand something. Allison is my wife, my responsibility, and right now, what she needs is stability, not interference. I'm her father, and I'm her husband. I have legal authority here. The doctors agree with me that she needs specialized psychiatric care, long-term care. I'm arranging for her transfer to a facility that can help her." My blood went cold. "What kind of facility?" "A place where she can get the treatment she needs. Where she'll be safe from herself and from..." He paused meaningfully, from influences that might upset her delicate mental state. He was going to lock her away, somewhere I couldn't reach her. "You can't do that," I said. Derek smiled, cold and triumphant. "Actually, Barry, I can. And I am. The papers are already being processed. By Monday, Allison will be getting the help she should have gotten years ago." Monday. That gave me 3 days. 3 days to stop Derek from locking Allison away in some psychiatric facility where I'd never be able to reach her. 3 days to gather proof that would hold up against a man who'd spent years building his case. I called Monica Reeves the moment I got to my truck. She answered on the second ring. "He's moving her," I said without preamble, "Monday to a psychiatric facility." There was a pause. "That's faster than I expected. He must suspect something. Can we stop it?" "Not directly. He has medical power of attorney, but—" I could hear papers rustling. "If we can prove she's being coerced, that she's competent to make her own decisions, we might be able to get an emergency hearing. It's a long shot, though. We'd need solid evidence. Ethan told me things about the medications Derek's been giving her, about threats, about being locked in her room. Get him to the child psychologist, today if possible. We need his statement properly documented." Monica's voice was urgent now. "And I need to examine your daughter myself, properly, without her husband present." "How?" "Derek doesn't leave her side. Leave that to me. I'll create a situation that requires his presence elsewhere. Be ready to move fast when I call." I sat in my truck after we hung up, my mind racing. 3 days, not enough time. But it had to be. I called the child psychologist Monica had recommended, Dr. Sarah Chen. She had an opening that afternoon, which felt like a miracle. I picked up Ethan from the hospital, telling Derek I was taking him for lunch and to give him a break from the hospital atmosphere. Derek had been reluctant, but I'd pushed. "The boy needs normalcy," I'd said. "A few hours away won't hurt." Dr. Chen's office was in a quiet building downtown, decorated to be comfortable for children. Bright colors, toys, books. Ethan clung to my hand as we walked in. "I don't want to talk to a stranger," he whispered. "She's going to help us protect your mom," I said gently. "But she needs to hear from you what's been happening. Can you be brave one more time?" He nodded, though his grip on my hand tightened. Dr. Chen was kind, patient. She didn't push. She let Ethan play with blocks while she talked about everyday things, his favorite foods, his favorite shows. Gradually, carefully, she steered the conversation toward home, toward his parents. I sat in the waiting room, listening to the muffled voices through the door. After an hour, Dr. Chen emerged, her face serious. "Mr. Peterson, can we talk privately?" We stepped into another room. Dr. Chen closed the door and turned to me, her expression grim. "Your grandson has been living in an environment of severe psychological abuse. The control, the threats, the fear-based compliance, it's textbook coercive control. And the things he's witnessed being done to his mother." She shook her head. "That child is traumatized. Can you document it in a way that will hold up legally? I'm already writing my report, and yes, I'll testify if needed. But Mr. Peterson, you need to understand something. Even with my report, even with everything you're gathering, there's no guarantee. Your son-in-law has built a very convincing case over years. Judges tend to be cautious about removing medical authority, especially when there's documented psychiatric history. The psychiatric history is fake. He created it. I believe you. But proving that in court quickly. Before Monday." She paused. "It's going to be difficult." I drove Ethan back to the hospital, my jaw set. Difficult didn't mean impossible. I'd worked construction for 40 years. I'd built things from nothing. I could do this. When we arrived, Monica was waiting in the lobby. "I need you to bring Ethan to the cafeteria and keep him there for the next hour," she said quietly. "I've arranged for Derek to meet with hospital administration about insurance issues. It's going to take him at least 45 minutes to sort out. That's my window." "What are you going to do?" "Evaluate your daughter, get her statement, record it if she's willing." Monica glanced toward the elevators. "And I'm bringing in Dr. Patterson. He's one of our senior psychiatrists, someone Derek hasn't been able to influence. If he agrees that Allison is competent, that she's being coerced, his opinion carries weight." I took Ethan to the cafeteria. bought him ice cream, and watched the clock. 43 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Monica." "We have it," she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "Your daughter is coherent, competent, and terrified." Dr. Patterson witnessed her statement. She detailed years of abuse, medication tampering, threats, and she's willing to fight, Barry. She wants her life back. I closed my eyes, feeling something break open in my chest. What now? Now we file for an emergency custody hearing. I've already contacted a family law attorney who specializes in these cases. Her name is Rebecca Walsh. She's expecting your call. I called Rebecca Walsh from the hospital parking lot. She was direct, no nonsense. "Mr. Reeves sent me your daughter's file. I've been reviewing it for the last hour. Here's the situation. Your son-in-law has been very thorough. He has medical documentation, psychiatric evaluations, statements from doctors. Breaking that is going to require us to prove a pattern of fraud and abuse. We have my grandson's testimony. We have Allison's statement. We have a psychiatrist saying she's competent. Good, that's a start, but we need more. We need to show motive. Why would he do this? What does he gain?" I thought about what Ethan had told me, about Derek's threats regarding Allison never seeing her son again. "Control," I said, "and probably money. Allison has a trust fund from her mother. It's supposed to be untouchable, but if she's declared mentally incompetent, her spouse could potentially gain control of it." Rebecca's voice sharpened. "How much are we talking about?" "About $400,000. That's motive. I need you to get me documentation of that trust. Any paperwork showing Derek tried to access it, or that Allison was preventing him from accessing it. How am I supposed to get that? Does your daughter have a safety deposit box? A lawyer she trusted? Somewhere she might have kept important documents," I thought back. "She used to use a storage unit for her mother's things. I have a key somewhere. Find it tonight. We need everything you can get me before Monday morning. Bank statements, medical records she might have kept, anything that shows a pattern." After hanging up, I sat in my truck, thinking. Allison's storage unit. I hadn't been there in years, not since we'd cleaned out her mother's house after she passed. But Allison had kept the unit, said she wanted to hold on to some memories. Maybe she'd been holding on to more than memories. Maybe she'd been preparing for this. I drove to my house, searched through boxes in my garage until I found the small key with a tag that read, "Secure Store Unit 247. Then I drove across town to the storage facility. It was after 8 when I arrived, the sun setting behind the rows of identical orange doors. Unit 247 was in the back. I unlocked it, pulled up the door, and stood staring at the contents. Boxes, lots of them. But in the front there was a filing cabinet I didn't remember. I opened the top drawer. Files, medical records, bank statements, printed emails, all organized, labeled, dated. Allison had been documenting everything. For years. There were bottles too. Prescription bottles with Derek's name on them, but tucked inside plastic bags with dates written on them in Allison's handwriting. "Evidence," one note said. "Made me take these. Felt wrong. Kept samples." She'd been building her own case, quietly, carefully, whenever she could. Every time Derek had medicated her, she'd saved a pill. Every time a doctor had written something suspicious, she'd kept a copy. Every threatening text, every controlling email, it was all here. My daughter had been fighting back the whole time. She just hadn't been strong enough to do it alone. I loaded everything into my truck. Then I called Rebecca Walsh. "I found something," I said. "I found everything." I spent that entire night at Rebecca's office. We went through every document, every piece of evidence. Rebecca's assistant helped us organize it all, create a timeline, build the case. "This is good," Rebecca said around 3 in the morning, her eyes bloodshot but focused. "This is really good. Look at this." She pointed to a series of bank statements. Derek tried to access the trust fund 6 times. Each time Allison blocked him. And look at the dates of her hospitalizations, within days of each denial. "He was punishing her," I said. "More than that. He was trying to have her declared incompetent so he could override her authority over the trust." Rebecca pulled up another document. "And this? This is a consultation with a lawyer about having her committed long-term. He's been planning this for at least 2 years. My hands clenched into fists. "Can we stop him?" "With this? Yes, I'm filing for an emergency hearing first thing Monday morning, but Barry, she looked at me seriously. We need to prepare for the possibility that the judge doesn't rule in our favor right away. These cases can take time. Derek might still be able to transfer her to that facility while the case is pending. So what do we do? Rebecca was quiet for a moment. There might be another option, a risky one. If we can get Allison out of the hospital before Monday, before he can execute the transfer, we could file for a protective order, keep them separated while the case proceeds. Question. How would we get her out? He has medical authority. Dr. Patterson could release her into your care. As her father, with a psychiatrist stating she's competent, that's legally defensible. But Derek will fight it. He'll probably call the police, claim kidnapping. It could get messy. I thought about Allison lying in that hospital bed, pretending to be unconscious because she was too terrified to move. I thought about Ethan, 6 years old, carrying the weight of his mother's secrets. I thought about losing them both to Derek's calculated cruelty. I don't care if it gets messy, I said. Tell me what we need to do. Sunday morning came too fast. I'd barely slept, running through the plan over and over in my mind, looking for holes, for things that could go wrong. There were too many variables, too many ways Derek could stop us. But we were out of time. Rebecca had filed the emergency motions overnight. Dr. Patterson had signed the release papers. Monica had coordinated with hospital security. Everything was in place. We just needed to execute it before Derek realized what was happening. I arrived at the hospital at 7 earlier than usual. Derek's car wasn't in the parking lot yet. Good. That gave us a window. Monica met me at the elevator, her face tight with tension. Dr. Patterson is with Allison now. He's doing a final evaluation, documenting her competency. We have maybe an hour before Derek arrives. He usually gets here around 8. We took the elevator to the 4th floor. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This was it. Either we got Allison out today, or Derek would move her tomorrow to a facility where I'd lose her completely. Dr. Patterson was in Allison's room when we arrived. He was a man in his 60s, gray-haired, with the kind of calm authority that came from decades of practice. Allison was sitting up in bed the first time I'd seen her upright since this nightmare began. Her face was pale, but her eyes were clear. "Dad," she said, and her voice broke. I moved to her side, taking her hand. "I'm getting you out of here, sweetheart. Today." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm scared, Derek. If he finds out—" "He's not going to hurt you anymore," I said firmly. "I promise you that." Dr. Patterson cleared his throat. "Mrs. Harrison, I need to ask you some questions. I need you to answer them clearly for the record. Do you understand?" "Yes," Allison whispered. "Are you being held in this hospital against your will?" "Yes." "Has your husband been medicating you without your consent or knowledge?" She nodded. "He's been putting pills in my food, in my drinks, things that make me foggy, confused, things that make me seem—" Her voice caught. "Seem crazy." "How long has this been happening?" 3 years, maybe longer. It got worse after I tried to divorce him the first time. Dr. Patterson made notes. "You attempted to divorce him?" 2 years ago, I contacted a lawyer. Derek found out. She closed her eyes. "He said if I tried to leave, I'd never see Ethan again. He said he'd prove I was unfit. He'd already been working on it, building this whole story that I was mentally unstable. The medications, the hospital visits, all of it was part of his plan. Why didn't you tell anyone? Your father?" Allison looked at me, her expression full of pain. "Derek monitored everything. Every call, every text. The few times I managed to see Dad, Derek was always there, always listening, and he'd convinced everyone, even the doctors, even Dad for a while, that I was the problem. Who would believe me?" "I believe you," I said, squeezing her hand. Dr. Patterson finished his notes. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm releasing you from this hospital into your father's care. In my medical opinion, you are competent to make your own decisions, and you are being subjected to coercive control and medical abuse. Do you consent to leaving with your father?" "Yes," she said immediately. "Please, I just want to get my son and go." Monica stepped forward. "We have clothes for you. You need to change quickly. Your husband usually arrives within the hour." But we were wrong about the timing. As Allison was in the bathroom changing, I heard a commotion in the hallway. Raised voices. Derek's voice. "Where is my wife?" I got a call that there was some kind of emergency evaluation. My blood went cold. Someone had tipped him off. Monica moved fast, positioning herself at the door. "Mr. Harrison, your wife is being evaluated by Dr. Patterson. You'll need to wait." "I don't need to wait for anything. She's my wife. I have medical authority." Derek pushed past her into the room, then stopped when he saw me. His face went from confusion to rage in an instant. "What the hell is going on here?" "Your wife is being released," Dr. Patterson said calmly. "She's competent, and she's requesting to leave." Derek's jaw clenched. "She's not competent. She's mentally ill. I have documentation." "Your documentation is fraudulent," I said, stepping forward. "We know what you've been doing. The medications, the threats, all of it." Derek's expression shifted, becoming cold and calculating. "Barry, I don't know what she's told you, but you have to understand she's not well. She has delusions. She makes up stories." "Stop," Allison said. She'd emerged from the bathroom, dressed in the clothes Monica had brought. She looked small, fragile, but there was steel in her voice. "I'm not delusional. I'm not mentally ill. You've been drugging me. You've been threatening me. You've been trying to steal my mother's trust fund by having me declared incompetent." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "I have proof. I've been documenting everything for 2 years. Every pill you forced me to take, every threat, every time you locked me in my room, every time you told me I was crazy, I have all of it." Derek's mask slipped. For a moment I saw real panic in his eyes. Then he recovered, his voice turning smooth, reasonable. "Allison, honey, you're confused. The medications you gave me without my knowledge. The ones that weren't prescribed by any doctor. The ones you got using your friend's medical license." She turned to Dr. Patterson. "He has a friend who's a physician. He's been getting prescription sedatives through him. I found the texts. I saved them." Derek's face hardened. "You can't prove any of this." "Actually, she can," Rebecca Walsh said, stepping into the room. I hadn't heard her arrive. "I'm Mrs. Harrison's attorney. We have extensive documentation of your abuse. And as of this morning, there's an emergency protective order preventing you from coming within 500 feet of your wife." Derek stared at her, then at me, then at Allison. "You can't do this. I have rights. I have legal custody." "Your medical power of attorney has been suspended pending investigation," Rebecca continued. "And we've filed for emergency custody of your son. Given the evidence of psychological abuse and endangerment—" "Ethan," Derek's voice rose. "You're not taking my son. He's not your possession," Allison said quietly. "And he's terrified of you. He's been living in fear, watching you hurt me, being forced to keep your secrets. That ends today." Derek took a step toward her, and I moved between them instantly. "Don't," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Don't even think about it." Hospital security appeared in the doorway, summoned by Monica. Derek looked around, trapped, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. "This isn't over," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You think you can just destroy me? Destroy everything I've built? I'll fight this. I'll fight all of you." "You do that," Rebecca said coolly. "We'll see you in court." Security escorted Derek from the room. I could hear him shouting threats all the way down the hallway. When the sound finally faded, Allison collapsed against me, sobbing. "It's okay," I whispered, holding her. "You're safe now. You're safe." Quite, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't quite over. Derek wouldn't give up easily. Men like him never did. We got Allison out of the hospital through a side entrance, avoiding the main lobby where Derek might be waiting. Rebecca had arranged for a car to take us directly to my house. Monica and Dr. Patterson would handle the remaining paperwork and submit their reports to the court. On the drive, Allison stared out the window, her hand gripping mine. "Ethan," she said suddenly. "We have to get Ethan. Derek will use him. He'll—" "The court issued an emergency order," Rebecca said from the front seat. "Child Protective Services is picking him up from Derek's mother's house right now. She's had him since yesterday. They'll bring him to your father's house within the hour." Allison exhaled shakily. His mother. She never believed me either. She always said I was too sensitive, that Derek was just trying to help me. "A lot of people didn't believe you," I said quietly. "I didn't believe you. Not at first. I'm sorry for that, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." She leaned her head against my shoulder. You believe me now, that's what matters. When we arrived at my house, Allison walked through it like she was seeing it for the first time. She touched the walls, the furniture, as if grounding herself in something real. I haven't been here in so long, she said. Derek always had a reason why we couldn't visit, always some excuse. You're here now, I said, and you can stay as long as you need to. True to Rebecca's word, a social worker arrived an hour later with Ethan. The moment he saw Allison, he ran to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Mommy, he sobbed, you're okay. You're really okay. I'm okay, baby, she whispered, kneeling down to hold him. We're both okay now. The social worker spoke quietly with Rebecca and me, while Allison and Ethan held each other. The preliminary hearing is scheduled for Tuesday. The judge will review the evidence and determine temporary custody. Mr. Harrison has already retained a lawyer. This is going to be a fight. Let it be a fight, I said. We're not backing down. That night, I made dinner for the three of us. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad. But watching Allison and Ethan at my kitchen table, talking quietly, occasionally laughing, it felt like a miracle. Later, after Ethan was asleep in the guest room, Allison and I sat on the porch. The night was cool, full of cricket sounds and the distant hum of traffic. I thought I was going to die in that hospital, she said softly. Or worse, that Derek would succeed in locking me away somewhere, that I'd lose my mind for real, that I'd never see Ethan again. But you didn't. You fought. You documented everything. You protected yourself even when you couldn't escape. He was quiet for a moment. I almost gave up so many times. There were nights when I thought it would be easier to just let him win, to stop fighting. He turned to look at me. But then I'd think about Ethan, about you, about Mom, and I couldn't let Derek take everything from me. Your mother would be so proud of you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I hope so, she smiled sadly. I used to wonder what she'd think, if she'd believe me, if she'd think I was weak for staying so long. You're not weak. You survived. That takes more strength than most people have. We sat in silence for a while, both of us knowing that the hardest part was still ahead. The court battle, the public scrutiny, the process of rebuilding a life that had been systematically destroyed. But for tonight, we were safe, and that was enough. The court hearing on Tuesday was everything I expected and worse. Derek showed up in an expensive suit, flanked by two attorneys. He played his part perfectly. The concerned husband, the devoted father, the man whose unstable wife had been manipulated by her interfering father. His lawyers painted Allison as delusional, me as controlling. They presented the medical records Derek had carefully fabricated over years, the psychiatric evaluations he'd orchestrated, testimony from his mother about Allison's erratic behavior. But Rebecca was prepared. She systematically dismantled every piece of Derek's narrative. She presented Dr. Patterson's evaluation, Monica's testimony about the pattern of suspicious hospitalizations, the child psychologist's report about Ethan's disclosures, and most damning of all, the evidence from Allison's storage unit, the medication samples that didn't match any legitimate prescription, the documented timeline showing hospitalizations occurring within days of Allison attempting to access legal help or block Derek from the trust fund. The text messages between Derek and his physician friend discussing keeping her manageable. I watched Derek's face as Rebecca laid it all out. His composure cracked piece by piece. The judge, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes, studied the evidence carefully. Finally, she spoke. Mr. Harrison, I find the evidence of coercive control and medical abuse compelling. The pattern is clear, the documentation extensive. I'm granting Mrs. Harrison full custody of the minor child and issuing a restraining order. You are not to contact your wife or son except through attorneys. Additionally, I'm ordering a full investigation into the prescribing practices that enabled this abuse. Derek stood abruptly. This is insane. She's manipulating all of you. Mr. Harrison, sit down, the judge said coldly. Your behavior in this courtroom is not helping your case. If you continue, I'll find you in contempt. Derek sat, but his hands were clenched into fists, his face red with barely controlled rage. The judge continued. Mrs. Harrison, I'm also ordering that you undergo an independent psychiatric evaluation to establish baseline mental health. Not because I doubt your competency, but because we need documentation to counter the false narrative that's been created. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Allison said quietly. This hearing is adjourned. Mr. Harrison, I suggest you use this time to reflect on your actions and cooperate with the investigation. Dismissed. Outside the courthouse, Derek tried one last time. He followed us to the parking lot, his attorneys trying to hold him back. Allison, he called out. Allison, please. We can work this out. I love you. I was just trying to help you. She stopped, turned to face him. I stayed close, ready to intervene if needed. You don't love me, she said, her voice steady. You never did. I was something to control, something to use. And when I didn't cooperate, you tried to destroy me. He paused. But I'm still here, Derek. I survived you, and I'm going to make sure Ethan never has to survive you too. Derek's face twisted with rage, but his attorneys pulled him away before he could respond. We drove home in silence. Ethan was waiting with a sitter, and when we walked in, he ran to Allison immediately. Did the judge say we can stay with Grandpa? He asked anxiously. Yes, baby. We can stay as long as we need to. His whole body relaxed. Forever? Allison laughed softly, tears in her eyes. Maybe not forever, but for a good long while. The weeks that followed were a blur of therapy appointments, legal meetings, and the slow process of healing. Allison underwent the psychiatric evaluation the judge had ordered. The results confirmed what we all knew. She had PTSD from years of abuse, but she was not and had never been mentally ill in the way Derek had claimed. The investigation into Derek's physician friend led to serious consequences. The friend lost his medical license. Derek faced charges of prescription fraud and assault. His carefully constructed reputation crumbled. But the most satisfying moment came 3 months later. I was in the kitchen making lunch when Allison came in, a letter in her hand. Her face was unreadable. What is it? I asked. The trust fund. Derek tried one last time to claim he had rights to it. His lawyers argued that as her husband, he was entitled to half. She looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw something like joy in her eyes. The court rejected it. Every penny stays with me. He gets nothing. I pulled her into a hug. That's your mother's legacy. She'd want you to have it, to use it to build a life for you and Ethan. I know what I want to do with some of it, she said, pulling back. I want to help other women. Women like me who are trapped, who don't have evidence, who don't have someone to believe them. I want to fund legal aid support groups, safe houses. Your mother would love that, I said, my voice thick with pride. 6 months after that terrible day in the hospital, Allison and Ethan moved into a small house about 10 minutes from mine. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. Safe. Free. I helped them move in on a Saturday. Ethan ran through the empty rooms, his laughter echoing off the walls. Allison stood in the living room watching him, and I saw her shoulders relax in a way they hadn't in years. You okay? I asked. She nodded. I'm good. Really good. She turned to me. Thank you, Dad, for believing me. For fighting for us. I don't think I ever really said that. You don't have to thank me. You're my daughter. That's what fathers do. Not all fathers, she said softly. Not all fathers see their daughters. Really see them. We stood there for a moment, and I thought about all the years I'd missed the signs, all the times I'd failed to see what was happening. I couldn't change that, but I could be here now. I see you, I said, and I'm so damn proud of you. That evening, after the boxes were unpacked and Ethan was asleep in his new room, Allison and I sat on her small back porch. The yard was overgrown, but she had plans to plant a garden, start fresh. Derek tried to contact me yesterday, she said quietly, through a mutual friend. He wanted her to tell me he's sorry, that he was sick, that he needs help. My jaw tightened. What did you say? I said no. I said I hope he gets help, but not from me. Not ever from me. She looked at me. I don't hate him anymore, Dad. I don't feel anything for him. And that feels like freedom. It is freedom, I said. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Yeah, it really is. A year later, I stood in a community center downtown. Allison was at a podium speaking to a room full of people, survivors, advocates, lawyers. She'd used part of her trust fund to start a foundation, resources for victims of coercive control and medical abuse, legal support, emergency housing, all the things she'd needed and couldn't find. I was lucky, she was saying. I had someone who believed me, someone who fought for me. But so many don't. They're trapped in systems that don't recognize their abuse, in relationships that look perfect from the outside, and they're dying slow deaths one day at a time. She paused, her voice growing stronger. This foundation is for them, for the women and men who think they're alone, who think they're crazy, who think there's no way out. There is a way out, and we're going to help you find it. The room erupted in applause. I watched my daughter, poised and powerful, and I barely recognized her from the woman who'd lain in that hospital bed pretending to be dead, because it was safer than being awake. After the event, we went to dinner, me, Allison, and Ethan. He was 7 now, still in therapy, but laughing more, sleeping better. He'd started calling my house the safe house, and every time he said it, my heart broke and healed at the same time. "Grandpa, can I stay at your house this weekend?" he asked over pasta. "Mom has that big meeting on Saturday." "Of course, buddy. We'll go fishing if you want." "Yes," he pumped his fist, and Allison laughed. I looked at them, my daughter and grandson, and I thought about how close I'd come to losing them, how Derek's plan had almost worked, how Allison had almost disappeared into some facility, lost forever. But she hadn't. She'd fought, and when she couldn't fight anymore, she'd asked for help. That took courage I couldn't fully comprehend. Later, after I dropped them at Allison's house and drove home alone, I sat in my driveway for a long time. The house was dark, empty. I'd lived alone for years since my wife passed, but it had never bothered me. Tonight, though, I felt the weight of everything that had happened, everything that could have happened. My phone buzzed, a text from Allison. "Thank you for today. Thank you for every day. I love you, Dad," I typed back, my fingers clumsy on the small keyboard. "Love you too, sweetheart. Always." I sat there in the darkness, thinking about the code we'd had when she was little. 3 squeezes, I need help. She'd used it that day in the hospital, a lifeline thrown across years and pain and fear. And I'd caught it. Sometimes that's all we can do, catch the lifeline when it's thrown. Hold on, pull our loved ones back from the edge. I got out of the truck and walked into my house. Tomorrow, Ethan would be here for the weekend. Allison would be at her meeting, building something beautiful from something terrible. And Derek was somewhere else, no longer part of our story. Not the villain, not the victim, just gone. The silence in my house wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. I'd spent years not seeing what was right in front of me, missing the signs, failing my daughter. But in the end, when it mattered most, I'd seen her. I'd believed her. I'd fought for her. And she was free. We both were.